I was a member of the 42nd Recruit Training Camp, the RTT, and that was in 1959. We were actually supposed to go in June of '59, but they didn't have any money for the class. They pushed it ahead to September 8th. We then graduated on December 12th, 1959. I'd like to run it back a little bit too, is that my father was also in the state police. And I am the second son of a trooper, a retired trooper. The first one was Richard Sullivan. And my father and Sullivan were both classmates in 1934. So Dick Sullivan, he retired as a lieutenant. His son came on, Richard came on the class before mine. So he was the first, I was the second legacy. It was a pretty good, big deal back in those days. My father was a member of the 26th RTT, and that graduated in 1934. It was called the Golden Class of the Mass State Police. And the reason they called it that is because of the Depression was full on at the time. There were highly educated people who couldn't get a job, so they came on the state police in the class of 1934. So these people had doctorates, lawyers, etc. It was quite a class. Now, I got a few notes here. Is that my father was the 644th trooper to be hired by Commonwealth of Mass, and I was the 1411th, which is 767 seniority points between him and I. I'm talking about him because he was long gone. He got killed in an accident on the turnpike right after he retired, so I just want to make sure that his legacy is also on this film. Going back there is, back in his day, they had the barracks commander, and I use barracks trooper as I'm talking, rather than road trooper, because back in my day, my father's day, and a decade after, we were barracks troopers. We did all police work because every single city and town did not have a police department at the time. So my father, he was the barracks commander as a senior trooper at Grafton, later promoted to corporal. He was also the barracks commander again as a corporal in Grafton. In his last barracks, he was a sergeant, buck sergeant in charge of the Concord barracks in A Troop. And then he left there. It's kind of interesting on the days off, you realize that we lived in the barracks. People look today are going to watch this film and say, "What do you mean lived in the barracks? You didn't go home every night?" No, we didn't. The wives loved it. But this for going back until the 1950s, the mid-50s, there was 1 day off in 10. Then that went to 1 day off in 10 with a night pass on the 5th day. So therefore, you'd work the 5th day, you could come home and be back to work the next morning. But it was a 10 days on, 1 day off in 10. When I went on, it was 1 day off in 4. So we worked 3 days, went home that evening, had a full day off, back to the barracks. In 1951, the pay scale in 1951 was between $3,100 a year and $3,700 a year. And salary in 1959, when I came on, was $4,000 a year, and after 6 years, you would go up to $5,000. When I was in the academy, it was $3,700 a year. Prorated, it's about $300 a week. We weren't called troopers. We weren't called troopers until 1954. Prior to that, we were called patrolmen. So it was in 1954. We were always known as trooper, but they officially made the title trooper. There's the old story is the reporter came in and said, "Do you have to be Irish to be on this job?" And he said, "Why? Why do you ask that?" He said, "Well, everybody in the log is Pat this, Pat that, Pat somebody else," which was short for patrolman.
What was your first memory of the state police?
Probably standing under a broken tree in Spencer when I was 1 year old. I mean, the first memory of the state police is my father, naturally. I mean, but they were great memories because they used to sneak home on patrol. And, they'd always, my father would say, go down and listen to the radio. So I'd listen to radio while they were in the house. So, and I met a bunch of great guys there, guys that when I came on, they were lieutenants and staff sergeants and people like that. And, they never really came out and said, we're gonna watch over you, but they had my back for the whole time until I made my own name. So it was a great fraternity there, great men, and I really wanted to be like them. I want to be like my father, but I also want to be like the rest of the troopers I met as a kid, child, teenager, and whatnot. My whole plan was, to graduate from high school, go in the Navy, go on to state police, and that's what I did.
And what was your first assignment?
The first assignment was in Russell. Russell is way up in the western part of the state. And that goes back when I was being interviewed. And of course, the job when I came on was only about 450 from colonel on down. So you went in for your final interview before coming on the job, going to the training school. And it was the colonel, the two staff captains, I think. Yeah. And they'd ask you questions. Well, but he asked a kid that all he did was go into high school and go into service. It's kind of tough for the interviewer to ask those questions. But I can remember one of them coming down. They asked me all kinds of questions. Who was the attorney general? I don't know. Who's the lieutenant governor? I don't know. Do you know who the governor is? Oh yeah, Foster Ferkalow. Well, you don't know the other guys? I said, I haven't been old enough to vote yet. This will be the first time I voted. So I can imagine. He said, they went on further and they said, what's the longest river in Massachusetts? Easy. I said, the Merrimack. They said, no, it's not the Merrimack. I went to State Police in Russell. I was up there for about a year or so, a little over a year. Then they transferred me, that was in B Troop. They transferred me to C Troop. So I went down there still as a barracks trooper. They went over to Leominster. I was at Leominster for, maybe 2 or 3 weeks when they crashed up a cruiser in a snowstorm, which resulted in a transfer. So they sent me immediately over to Holden. I stayed in Holden for a matter of 2 or 3 months, and then finally went to what I consider my home barracks in Brookfield. Brookfield was like no other barracks that you could go to. We were the only police department, other than Spencer and Leicester, we were the only police in the entire area. And, that was quite nice. You were part of the community. You did everything from, we didn't have much motor vehicle work up there. You didn't get too many speeders, a couple of drunk drivers, very few accidents. But we went to every other call that would come down to any police department. In fact, one day we got a call, we were in the barracks and it was snowing pretty hard. And a woman was in heavy labor up in North Brookfield. So we responded up there, myself and John Flaherty, who was from South Boston. Both of us, not married. I had one experience in my earlier years in delivering a child, so I had kind of an idea of what was going on. So we drove up there in this snowstorm, and we get in, and she's just about ready to give birth. So I delivered the child at that time, and I sent John 3 or 4 houses down to get a doctor, because I knew the doctor lived there. He came back, and I had just tied off the cord and whatnot, but I wasn't sure what to do beyond that. So Doc came in, he said, did a good job, this, that, and the other thing. He taught me right then and there how to take the placenta out and whatnot to do the whole job, and which was really neat. So then I said to John, go down and warm the cruiser up, because he wanted to take him to Mary Lane Hospital in Ware. So John said, okay, down he goes. I figured the cruiser's warm. I take the baby, snowing like crazy out. I take the baby, and John's sitting in the passenger seat. I said, get out and drive. He said, no. I said, yeah. I said, I'm the senior man, drive, I'm taking the baby. He said, no. So we had a fight there. Oh, the language that poor little child heard. But that was quite a thrill, I know some of the bad things that happened, that I've never got over. Again, when we were in Brookfield, I had my first child death, just a little teeny blonde girl. You know, she slipped, went across the floor, hit her head on the refrigerator. Myself and a guy named Tommy Nonan from Worcester had 5 children, oldest guy in my class. We went up there, the little blonde-haired baby's laying there, and we had a oxygen tank, put it on it, and, you know, she appeared to be coming back to life. The doc came in and called it, and we said no. You know, and he let us go for another minute or two, and he said he called it. Well, that was kind of tough. And the baby deaths you see after that, young adults get you. There's just some very bad and sad things you see on there. You know, road troopers might be these newer guys that are coming on and whatnot, but we were barracks troopers.
Yes, you were.
We lived in the barracks. We played in the barracks. You know, and did everything out of the barracks. You know, so barracks trooper, not road trooper. You know. And the question was, what did I do? Special units?
What specialty units did you?
Well, for 8 years I was in the barrack system in uniform, and then I got transferred into 1010 Boston, which was state police headquarters at the time. I went in there into the Criminal Information Bureau, which is referred to as CIB, and what they were was an intelligence unit and a narcotic and vice unit. What they had prior to myself and another 2 other troopers, Robin Monroe and Mike Shimkus, we were the first 3 deep, full-time undercover officers on the job, meaning that we did nothing else but undercover work. We went out to first because narcotics was coming out into the suburbs and whatnot. Parents were getting all upset. We want enforcement done on this narcotic problem. It was all right. So we had a peeping Tom up in one of the Brookfields, and the farmers up there were getting a little upset, and they say, well, you know, why don't we just go out and grab them and whatnot? He said, no, we gotta wait, right? So it was a Sunday, and they got a call from a farm, and they said the guy was in the backyard or in the back house, right? So myself and Lou go up, and we searched the whole house, and there's nobody in the place. You know? And I said, come on, Lou, let's go. And he said, no, he said, we haven't done the attic yet. Guy's not in the attic. I get my flashlight, I can't see anybody. He says, I gotta go in. So what the attic is, you know, it's the 1x6s that are going on, I don't know how to explain more. And Lou goes in, I said, I'll go down and talk to the farmer. You know, and they're having Sunday dinner. You know, 15 kids, 10 adults, food all over the place. They're just having a great time. So I'm talking to the farmer, and they said, the guy's gone. I said, we'll get him someday, but the guy's gone. And all of a sudden, crash. And all we see is boots and breeches through the ceiling. The ceiling falls in right on the table with all the food on it, right? We look up, and Lou is caught under the armpits on the 1x6, right? And all we can see is his gun belt, his boots, and he's kicking like this. Of course, we started laughing, you know. He's yelling, you know, he's embarrassed because the fact that we're laughing at him. I go pull him out, he runs to the cruiser to hide. He's so embarrassed. I go in and I say to the farmer, I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I don't know how we'll fix this, you know, but I said, send a bill, and I said, he'll do it somehow. He says, you go tell Lou that it's not going, we'll fix it ourselves, because that was the funniest damn thing we ever saw. Lou was mortified. Well, as I say, I worked undercover for 8 years, but the investigator in C Troop got hurt. I think he fell off a motorcycle or something. So my lieutenant, Bill, said, you know, take a couple weeks off and go up and cover him. Right? So I said, okay. Up I go, and I get a call, and it was a chicken farmer, and he caught his daughter, his teenage daughter, smoking some grass. You know, so, you know, people they didn't understand narcotics back then. I mean, you grab your kid with a marijuana cigarette, it was the end of the world for a lot of people. That was the case with this farmer. So I go up there, I knock on the door, and Mrs. Farmer comes in, and she says the farmer's down at the chicken coop. Well, where's the chicken coop? I'm thinking the chicken coop, you know, like a little pen with a half a dozen chickens in it. This is like a warehouse, right? And you walk in there, and they're all talking at the same time. It's a madhouse in the place, and it's about 90 degrees in the heat, and all the eggs are dropping down and whatnot. I'm fascinated, looking around. Farmer comes down, there's so much noise we can't really talk, right? Now, I had just left the combat zone in Boston, 2 weeks before. I have got on my downtown Boston suit, jewelry, my loafers, which are French soles on them, they're only a quarter of an inch thick, and I'm standing there and I'm saying to myself, come on, man, it's only a joint, you know, and but I gotta play this cool. But I look down and I can see the chicken poop coming over the lasting of my little French loafers. And I started laughing. And the farmer got angry. The farmer threw me out of his chicken coop. And we had the plane crash, Delta went down in the 60s. And again, I was thinking those shoes, I had the same shoes on. I was in Boston at the time. I arrived at a place, it was still smoking, and the troopers at the Logan Airport were doing a great job. I was in civilian clothes, mind you. And we were walking around, and it was just a horror show. That goes back many, many years. I've talked to people over the years on what we saw. We didn't actually see it. I think you block out stuff like that. I think there was about 100 people, 120 people dead. And you know, it was just a horror show. And the state police did a great job in cleaning that up. You know, bringing all the people in who lost, the survivors. You know, I was in charge of finally in charge of the security thing. Anything that looked jewelry, anything of any value, we put it in a big security pile. The troopers or whoever else, the other officers come in, would throw it on the thing. And so they had a friend of mine, he was a crime photographer, Boston Globe. His name was Bob Ward, that was his name. So Bob comes in and he's walking around, he goes over the security pile and he picks up, he had this little envelope and he looks in it and he said, I think it's spy stuff. I said, what is that? You know? So he handed it to me and I look at it and it was the not NATO, but the one that's between Canada and the United States. You know, so looking it over, and it's all this technical stuff on military weapons and stuff like this, but it had a UNH, University of New Hampshire logo on the top. So I looked at it and I said, no, I think this is a paper that belongs to a professor or something along that line. You know, throw it in the pile. He prints it, you know, it gets picked up by all of the networks all around. I'm getting calls from the Washington Post, New York Times. They're asking me what I saw, and I'm saying, you know, it's not secret, it's not anything like that. It's a college paper. Well, one of the victims was a college professor, and it was actually that. You know, and, Washington Post was the only one that got back and said, geez, you were right, trooper. You know. Bill Russell.
Can you tell us your Bill Russell story?
Bill Russell. I was on the turnpike for 2 years. Hated it. You know, you could be called a road trooper if you're out there. You know, we were still in the barracks. So I'm out there one day in a small car, a small sedan comes by, and I wasn't big in stopping cars, so every once in a while I just say, oh, there's a car. Everybody was 5-10 miles over. I pull them over, give them a warning. So I pull up and I walk up to the car, you know, and there's this black guy sitting there in the car, very quiet and whatnot. And I notice his knees are up like this because he can't fit in the car. Right? So I'm looking, I'm saying, what the devil's going on here, right? Let's see the license registration. I walk back, I look at it, it says William Russell. He lived up in Linfield or someplace like that. So we walk back and I said, Bill Russell's from the Celtics? And he said, yes, I am. You know, and I said, well, you know, I gave him back the license registration and whatnot. We talked for a little bit, and I said, why are you in a car that I said, you can't even safely drive this thing. He says, my Cadillac broke down. He says, this is my wife's car, and I have to go to New York. And I met Nelson Rockefeller, what's his name, Paul Newman and his wife, a few other people that, you know, you bump into interesting people.
And you pulled over your wife once, correct?
That I did.
And tell us that little story.
I was a very intense person when I was stopping cars. And to qualify it, I did stop my wife, but I didn't know her very well. I had only been married for a couple of weeks. And in fact, we might dated about 20 times before I married her. I wasn't going to let her get away. You know? And So we're out in the Brookfields and driving down. They had a sport car, right? And there's a light out, so I pull this car over, and the guy I'm riding with said, "Jim, it's your wife." I said, "No, because what would she be doing up in Brookfield at 10 o'clock at night?" So I walk up and I said, "See license registrations." She says, "You're kidding me." Oh, I said, "I know it was you." She said, "You didn't know it was you. You don't even own your own car." So I gave her a warning. We did not have a computer. We had a teletype machine. Anytime we had activity in a substation, you printed out a tape, and you put this tape in this machine, you would send it over to Holden, and then they would turn around and they would send it into 1010, which was headquarters in Boston. That was the technology. We had like two Underwood typewriters from the 30s to do the reports on, and that was about it. We had the weapons that we had in our armory. We had, they would never even see the light of day today. Rising guns, machine guns, sawed-off shotguns, things like that. We didn't have. Even on the gun, we had a 38 caliber revolver with a 110 grain bullet in it, lead bullet, which would, you couldn't knock a guy down with it. Basically, you graduate from the training school, uniform, gun, badge, club, handcuffs, a ballpoint pen, a whistle, and that was about it. And I've often said, because I'm still a bit involved in some think tanks on the state police and law enforcement in general, and being the oldest one on this committee, this thing that we're on, I said, I don't think I could be a trooper today. I don't think I could understand, not what they're doing, but all this equipment that they have. It's mind-boggling. They get that freaky dog that, you ever see that thing that walks around there? I mean, it's amazing what they do. And it brings up the question, is that how did we ever solve crime when we didn't have DNA, we didn't have, on the fingerprints you had to get a suspect to match it to the card. The firearms identification was very good. I mean, that's the top in the country. First came about in the Sacco Vincenti trial back in 21, around that. And that put forensic gun science, firearm science in the forefront of law enforcement. But other than that, no, I never saw any.